We'll start the meeting. With that said, we're here tonight for the Aliomanu Road repair and revetment work. My name is Donald Fujimoto. I'm with the county.
I'm Michael Moll. I'm with the county as well. We're both in Public Works Department in the engineering division. And I'm the chief of engineering, and we're managing this project for the county.
My name is Mike Foley. I'm with a company called Oceanet. We're an ocean engineering firm, started on Oahu. We've been doing ocean engineering projects locally for 30 years in Hawaii. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you guys.
So, a lot of people are wondering, why are we talking about all of these options? And it's very confusing because there's a road, out there in Aliomanu. It's eroding, and timing is everything. 5 years ago, if we did the project, it would be done. There's a new requirement now. Our plan is still to repair the road and protect it with a revetment. The revetment is a rock wall, natural looking rock wall, like you have in Tekaha, Wanakai. But to do that, we have to do an alternative analysis. We have to look at all available options, including retreat from the shoreline, moving the excess away from the shoreline. And that's why we're here tonight, is to go over those options. And I really appreciate all of you here tonight. We have a lot of comments. A lot of it so far is in support. We could use a lot more support for this project. I mean, that would make it a lot faster to get the permits. So the more support we get, the faster we can get our permits. But we will address all of your concerns, and that's why we're here tonight, is to hear what the concerns are and to make sure that we address those concerns. So with that said, we've got a short presentation, after which time you'll be able to comment and ask questions. So Mike will do the presentation.
Feel free to jump in anytime, Don. Okay, so thank you everyone for coming. I'm really excited that there's so much interest in this issue, and we're all out here talking about a road repair. So to have this room packed is exciting. So thank you all for being here. Can I just ask a show of hands, how many people live in the Anahola community? Okay, excellent. Most of you. Maybe not all. How many are visiting? Okay, just me. And Nancy. So I'm originally from Maui, but I live in Honolulu now. This is where the Oceanet building is, my company. So today, just to give an overview of the talk, my presentation, we'll go over some background information on the project, the purpose of this project. We'll cover some of the activities, some of the environmental studies we've done to date. This includes topographic surveys, wave analysis, erosion assessments, archaeological studies. So basically, we've already done environmental assessment for this project. And what we're going to talk about tonight is supplementary information that we want to add on to this assessment. We're also going to go over the proposed alternatives and the evaluation of these alternatives, and then provide a summary. And then at the end, if you could, hold your major questions and your comments for the end. But feel free, if there's something I'm talking about that you really just don't understand, or if you want a quick question, just feel free to say that. But major questions, please, let's say that for the end. Okay, so Aliomanu Road, this area, it's been eroding actually since we know it, since we started taking aerial photographs and started to record topographic charts. The first topographic chart of this area goes back to 1928, and ever since then, the coastline in Anahola area, for the most part, has been eroding. At our project the erosion is on average a foot a year. This has really gotten bad in the last decade when the road just started to collapse into the ocean. And so that's really when the erosion issue became a big concern and a safety hazard for this area, for this community. Now, this road is the only means of access for at least 28 residences in the community. So, you know, this is an issue because in its current state, who has seen the road recently? Okay, excellent. So in its current state, we're basically talking a 2-lane road has become a 1-lane road. And this is an issue for, you know, fire engines, or it's also an issue if there were a tsunami and everyone had to evacuate at once. You know, what we want is 2 lanes for people to all get out. It's also, you know, having just an exposed clay shelf there, it isn't providing structural support. So for a heavy engine, like a fire engine, for instance, there's a risk that the road could collapse under it. There's also water utilities that go under the road, and there's power lines next to the road. So this is utilities, you know, water, electric, for those residences. Okay, so here's the site, and the circle basically represents the area that we're focusing on. But today we're gonna go over some alternatives. So overall, we're looking at the Anahola community here. The site is north of the Anahola River mouth, and it's this section of Aliomanu Road that is closest, that is basically right next to the ocean that we're concerned about. Next one. So I'll just show a few recent pictures. Some of these pictures were taken, I believe, in February of this year. So you can see, basically, there's jersey barriers to keep the traffic from getting too close to the exposed edge of the asphalt. Next slide. Oh. So you'll see here this.
Sorry guys,
Okay.
I'll make it faster though.
Great. So here's the exposed edge of the asphalt. So this isn't normal. You know, you can see there's some vegetation growing, but a feature that you should all, that I really want you to take note of is all the boulder basalt rock that's down on the beach. And this next slide here shows from the ocean side, looking up at the road. So the road's up here. And basically, these rocks are natural in origin. They've been exposed by the erosion. There's a headland that comes out here. So this is volcanic flow. And as the erosion has kind of cut into the clay, the underlying clay, it's been exposing this rock. It's also been putting this clay material into the ocean. So currently, there's a bit of a water quality issue. This can lead to siltation on the reef. It's not ideal for aquatic, the marine environment. You'll see remnants of previous emergency or temporary repair structures that were installed in the past, as well as a current, we call this an Elko rock sandbag structure. And these are meant to be temporary repairs to buy us time as we go through this entire environmental review process and go through all the regulatory agencies. Yes?
I have a question for you.
Sure.
You see that point?
This point here?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That's the only point we natives can go. After that point, you go down to the road, they arrest you, they call policemen on you, you cannot go pick your bike, you cannot go down the river at the river mouth. That's our place. That's their place. I'm not from here. But you talking to me to save them? They live down there on billion-dollar homes. And you talking to us, oh, save their road? They pay for their road. Not me, not I, not them. Because you cannot go down to the end of the road where we could pick our open. We could swim at the river. So you talk to me, I'm only here for once, I'm going to tell you. Let them pay for the road. Why you going to cut my road? Up at Aliomanu, or at the end of the road.
Okay.
For Anahola. No, they're going to okay. I will just tell you
let
once.
me
I'm
address-
out of here. It's bullshit. I don't know who you work for, but you don't work for me. I just came once, and I'm going to tell you. Let those people pay for that road. Why we should pay for that road? They don't want, we can't even go to the end of the road. They arrest us. We can't even catch our pipe. You don't even know what a pipe means, huh?
Okay, I want to reiterate what Mike said earlier.
Really,
Mike,
here we go again. The young
Mike,
ones with
these
the
kinds of comments are
ideas.
totally fine. We want, at this point, just questions that are related to the presentation, specifically asking for clarification on the presentation. We will have time at the end for more in-depth questions and comments about any issue that you have, but for now, let's try to let Mike get through the presentation so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I left because I really want to respond. Anyway, just move on. So this is the current conditions, and kind of getting to the gentleman's comment.
I'm sorry, even though he left, I would like you to respond. Though.
Okay, great,
Yeah.
thank you. So this is about the public resource. This is about the beach. This isn't only about 28 residences, but it is about 28 residences as well, because everyone has a right to access their property. Everyone has a right for utilities. We all pay taxes to the county, and the county has a responsibility to provide access to your property, as well as water and electricity. This is our system. And, this is an issue because this is a threat to public safety. And another issue here is the environment. So, we have to be good stewards of our environment. And we're also losing a public resource. We're losing lateral access to a shoreline. So, if you do fish on that headland, on that point, and this road disappears, you're going to need to find another way to get there. One way to get there is to hike on the shoreline, but if it's all boulders and there's waves crashing on it, that becomes more dangerous. What we want to do is restore this area, restore the beach, and bring it back for everyone. And that's a public resource that we all enjoy in the state of Hawaii.
Before you leave that picture,
Yes.
what percent of the road is left right now of the original road?
So we have probably about, I would guess, on the order of 50% of the original road, but it's getting worse. So there's starting to be sinkholes.
I'd like to expand on that. 50% usable. So you see where the barricades are, that's your 50%. But if you go up to the very edge of the asphalt that's still there, I'd say we got about 75% of the road still there. Most of the road that we lost were the shoulder.
How much is that, about 5 feet?
About maybe another 3 feet.
So we've lost a good portion. And what used to be there was much further out. So we used to have a beach here, according to our old information. Yes?
I'm sorry for the interruption as well too, but for the sake of clarity, this particular road that's down there, for the standards of it being a 2-lane road, as well as anything off to the sides, whether Mike or somebody from the county, what is, I guess, for safe purposes of travel on a 2-lane road like this, what is the minimum standards that could be there? Both road as well as easement or whatever on the sides. that we're requesting or looking at to make this a viable, ingress, egress type of a road.
Right. So, according, there's standards for how wide a road should be. Then there's kind of, if you want to add shoulders, you can get it wider. If you want to add pedestrian paths, then you can go wider, of course. On minimum, we're talking in the order of around 10 feet for a roadway, just to get through, right? To provide safe access. But there's a balance here between how much we go MAUKA versus how MAUKA, we hug into the shoulder. So
I'd like to answer your question by just saying that our proposal is just to put back what was there. We're not going to improve the road and make it a super highway. Our plan is just to put back what was there. I believe the existing road width is about, roughly about 16 feet maybe. 16 feet wide, the pavement itself.
Okay. Well, that answers my question.
Excuse me. So that would be enough for a 2-lane highway?
Well, that was what was there. And
I
that
thought
was,
there was a 2-lane highway all the way through there.
yes.
After that, going up past that is 1 lane.
No, it's still too late. It's still too late. So the width will not expand or contract. It's just supposed to be the way it was. He talked about emergency vehicles. Right now, based on this width, single lane, the fire trucks can go in. The rubbish trucks can go in. All your emergency vehicles can go in. The issue becomes if we keep letting this erode, then the shoulders might get so close to the edge that when the trucks go, then you're gonna collapse the road. And that's when it becomes dangerous. So even if we were to put a single lane road, the difference is that single lane road will be stabilized and protected so that even if you have a heavy truck, it's still gonna be safe for the truck to go across.
Okay, so this is the current condition, and so now let's kind of transition into what kind of where we're going with this project, and kind of what we're doing today in this meeting. So to provide safe access to the Aliomanu neighborhood, we're gonna in this supplemental part of our environmental assessment, we're basically looking at what the expected effects of sea level rise might be in the future. We're also going to look at how to repair the existing road and protect it. And then, and this is the fun part, we're going to look at alternatives. So what else can we do besides repair this road? So as I mentioned, we've done a bunch of work to date, and I brought a copy of the environmental assessment that was already published. There was already comments, and it was basically accepted by permitting agencies in the past. And so what we're doing is now adding on to this because things have changed. But we've done topographic surveys where we've kind of looked at the elevation of the land, basically. We've done wave analyses and erosion assessment, archaeological studies. We've done a beach nourishment study, and then an environmental supplementary, our supplementary assessment includes the sea level change and the alternatives. And then now we're also going through the permitting process once we complete this section. Yes?
What kind of archaeological studies were done and what was found?
So we have an archaeological survey of the area, of basically our study site. And our study site in particular is mostly fill. So we don't think there'll be fill material. So it's basically the roadway, they brought fill to make the road. And so there could be cultural remains MAUKA of our site. So that's an issue. But in our existing beach, this is mostly fill, and then what's been eroded. So it's mostly an eroded area.
I'd like to add on that the requirements of construction will require an do the construction, we will be monitoring for any kind of cultural or significant findings. As we move on to the alternatives that we're going to consider, we did not do that level of archaeological studies that we already did for the repair of the road. You know, bearing in mind the road was there for all these years. And some of these options that we're talking about is on pretty much native virgin ground. And so that might have some issues with archaeological.
Thank you.
Is there anything in writing currently regarding the supplemental environmental assessment, or is it just?
We have a draft report, and it will be published in the environmental notice very shortly. So
Okay, for the public to see?
yes, for the public to see and comment.
I'm kind of late to the game. When was the road built?
1940s.
Okay.
So again, clarifying on the supplemental EA, again, the reason we're doing this is because it is a requirement to repair the existing road.
Yes.
You have the final environmental assessment online that was done in September of 2009. We're talking about 8 years ago, so what's been happening for 8 years?
Great
I mean,
question.
why didn't we do it right after the final environmental assessment was done 8 years ago?
Yeah, I can answer that. Like I said, timing is everything. In 2008, the county put in an emergency temporary repair. If you remember, there was this coconut bags that was placed there on the filter fabric. And thanks to that project was really designed to last only 2 or 3 years. The environmental study took much longer than that. It took about maybe 3 years, well, 2009, so it's about 2 years. But what happened was because the sandbags were placed, it was doing so well that, you know, the county has a lot of priorities. That all of a sudden, the focus moved away from this area. And so over time, as the sandbags eroded, then we got all excited again, got back on the momentum, wanted to do the job, but then the laws changed. And that's why we're back into this planning, permitting process, because we had plans ready to go.
So the alternatives are required by law now, is that it?
It is, a study is required by law. And if you know, and for good reason. You know, if there is a real simple option, that you know, could be done for a lot less, then we should do it and abandon the road.
A simple option.
Yeah. You're gonna see that there isn't that simple option that we could do. All of the options that we're looking at is a lot more expensive and a lot more time consuming to do. So
why are we even considering them?
because it's, again, required by law. So now we're documenting this stage and we're saying we went through the due process, there isn't any reasonable option we can do to mitigate this, and this is a viable option.
So if we were to say, let's go with one of the other options, one of the other alternatives, it would take an additional 2 years to get everything fixed.
Yes.
Do you think that road's going to even last 2 more years from now?
Well, I don't want to discount our options. All I'm saying is that, yes, there will be a chance that, you know, that road might be really in bad shape and we might lose access. But as you notice, we are right now going through another emergency sandbag procurement. So the whole coastline might end up being temporary sandbags until we actually get the permanent fix.
Okay.
Question is, how long will DLNR allow us to do that? The current 4 bags that you saw in the picture, we're supposed to take out December of this year. Obviously, we're going to ask for an extension. We're going to say we still need it because we don't have the final permits to do the final repair.
What about the funding for the revetment program? Is that already in place?
Well, it is targeted, but you know, again, based on our permit, we have it earmarked for the year that we actually need it. I think it's next fiscal year.
Next fiscal year.
It's not this coming fiscal year. It's not 2018. It's 2019.
Does that mean that this road won't be repaired until 2019?
Well, the fiscal year starts in July of 2018. So it could start as early as 2018.
What if it gets washed out tonight? What's the alternative?
Well, then we're gonna have to do more emergency work, and we're gonna see more sandbags out there, you know, obviously.
Okay, you're talking about the sandbag, you use sandbag? Is that off the book?
No, the ones that we're using now is a synthetic bag, and it's been proven to last. If it was a coconut bag, we're lucky if it's gonna last 2 years or a year and a half.
Where are you gonna get the sand?
The sand right now is being permitted from the Aliomanu River mouth. I mean, thanks to Anahola River mouth, thanks to DHHL, they've granted us permit to get the sand from that area.
Yeah, they already did, and look, the water's encroaching on the road, and it's gonna flood all those houses.
Well, that is the reason why it's actually, we're being good neighbors. The reason why the road floods the road, the water floods the road is the river mouth closes. The water cannot get out and it rises. The reason the river mouth closes is because all the sand is moving down towards this area. And whenever you have high waves, it gets worse. The high waves accentuates, it pushes the sand up and it closes that river.
It never was like that before you guys took the sand for those sandbags. It never encroached on the road, ever. When you guys did that wall with the sandbags or coconut sandbags, what happened was the water started rising up to the road. I know, because
Right. You know, I don't want to argue with you. All I can tell you is this. Regardless of whether we did it or not, it would happen because that's
it's
the
going to
natural.
happen again, and then it's really going to flood the road, and
Okay,
nobody's going to
wait. Okay, so getting back to the sandbag, okay? Getting back to the sandbag. You're saying that you're not gonna use the coconut or whatever. Who's gonna maintain it once it breaks? Are you guys gonna replace it?
Yes.
Because, you know what? I go fish over there and break it. And they'll be out, and to help me because those bags had wrapped around my legs and I didn't even see it. But we always constantly putting it out of the water, putting it up as hard as, boy, come on.
Yes.
So my thing is, if you guys wanna do whatever, do the sandbag, but have somebody there maintain, not sit in their truck, mind you, and just look, walk it. Because I walk it with all my own families, with my own women. And it behooves me when people in your status say that we're gonna go and maintain, please, put your money where your mouth is. Have someone walk it.
I apologize for what has happened. And it's obvious that there was no maintenance done. Yes. And I agree with you. But now that I'm here, and as long as I'm doing this project, I will ensure that it gets done. One of the requirements of putting the sandbags was to remove the air fly fabric, the one that you so-called says you get entangled with. Yeah, the problem with that is if we take that out, it's going to erode even faster. You're going to see more silt going in the ocean, and you're going to see an accelerated, decay of that area. That air fly, blessing in disguise or whatever, is actually helping stabilize that road right now. And the state has looked at it and agreed with us. They said, okay, you can leave it there until you're ready to do the permanent repair. When that happens, you take that out. And we'd be more than happy to take it out at that time.
Can I make a suggestion? When you do take the sand out, don't take it from the south side of the river, take it from the north side. Because if you take it from the south side, then you're going to threaten the homes, all the homes that are on the south side of that river and that road. I've seen that road flood already.
Okay, yeah,
Just
I
a
mean,
suggestion.
the plan would be to try to take it out as close to the river mouth as possible. Because the river mouth is what's sealing that river, yeah.
So I really want to stress, I'll let you ask your question, but I really want to stress that we have a presentation here with the alternatives that we intended to present to you tonight. We don't want to get to a situation where it's 8 o'clock and we haven't finished our presentation. So I would like us, and we've had a series of questions for a good 15, 20 minutes now. I would like us to try to get through this because we've already had people leaving because, I don't know why, but the more people leave, the less we're going to be able to hear our alternatives. So I would like to get through that. And these are great comments and questions, and we want to address all of them, but I would like us to get through the presentation now so that we have more to be able to digest as we ask questions and answer.
You guys finish, you guys start, because by 8 o'clock, you guys will leave. So we get through the start, then later on, like you said, you can answer.
Thank you. Okay. So here's part of the story of why we're seeing some erosion, and the potential causes, and what we're going to see in the future. So here's the Willy Willy tide gauge. This goes back, as you can see, to 1955 or so is when they started collecting data. This shows the sea level rise on Kauai. So on Kauai, we have a rate of about 1.4 centimeters per decade. And in the last 50 years, that's an average of 3 inches. So in some of your lifetimes, you may have seen a slight change, but you probably didn't notice it. But what we're looking at in the future is there's a bunch of different scientists out there with different predictions, and these are all based on climate models of how the world is going to change. So as you can see, there's a bunch of different predictions. This graph goes from 1993, which is the average when the tidal epoch was set. So this is, in other words, when someone says your property is 10 feet above mean sea level, well, mean sea level might have been set around 1993. So if we go 50 years from today, so let's say today is 2020 when the road gets built. If we go 50 years into the future, that's 2070. The range of sea level rise that we can expect is, on the worst case, 3.5 feet. On the best case is business as usual. This is our rate as we see it today, which would be about half a foot, right, in 50 years. What you don't see in this graph, and what the scientists are now starting to come up with, is the uncertainty, or the risk. So in other words, this purple graph, it has a very low probability of occurrence. We're talking 0.1% chance that we're going to see this bad of sea level rise. So as an engineer, we have to balance risk and cost. And so we typically follow what the Army Corps of Engineers says, because they write the coastal engineering manual. They set the standards. They're the ones that build the harbors. So we typically follow their rules, and so we're going to have a rate of about 1 foot in the next 50 years. But whether it's 1 foot or it's a higher prediction around 2 feet, the point is the road isn't going to be underwater anytime soon. The road's over 10 feet above sea level rise. Even by 2100, it's still going to be above sea level. So it's 10 feet above at the moment. It's not going to be underwater anytime in our lifetimes.
Except on Big Sur.
So now let's get into the alternatives. So we know the road's going to at least be above sea level rise into the future. But if we don't want to armor the coastline, because we all know that there's environmental cost when it comes to any project. And so let's look at the cost and the benefits here. So we've identified 5 alternatives besides the 6, which would basically be do nothing. But the 5 alternatives, if we're going to do something about the problem, is 1, to repair the road at its existing location. That's the white line. The second alternative we're going to discuss is to move the road MAUKA, to push the road inland, to avoid the erosion area. That's the red line. The third alternative is to reconstruct a bridge which once existed north and connected the 2 Aliomanu roads. The fourth alternative is to connect with the Department of Hawaiian Homeland's neighborhood. They have an existing road which comes to here. We could connect and bring that road down to Aliomanu. Probably a controversial.
Yeah.
But we're looking at all the options. The fifth alternative is to connect Aliomanu Road with this large agricultural lot, which currently has a gravel driveway which comes to about here. And we could then make this an entire county road and connect it. Probably controversial.
I could also add that the numbering doesn't have anything to do with priorities yet. These numberings are just arbitrary.
But this is what the law wants us to do, so we're going to do it. So let's go through the options. Here's another view of those options again, just to give you another overview. So you can see kind of the lines give you an indication of the scale or the scope of work, or how much we're going to disturb the neighborhood here. So you can see our existing site is relatively small compared to our other alternatives up here. And then the bridge is relatively that same scale. Here's the location of what we would do. So let's go through this repair project, and I'll kind of give you some ideas on cost here, as well as how long it's going to take us to finish this project and have a completed solution. These are engineering estimates, so we kind of, we do our best to scope the project based on our experience and all the things that we're going to encounter and how much it's going to entail to do this kind of work. So as I go through these alternatives, I'll try to lay out those numbers for you, as well as give you some idea of the environmental concerns that are associated with it.
Will that be today's numbers or 2020 numbers?
This is today's numbers. It doesn't account for inflation. So the idea and what we've suggested, our kind of preferred alternative here, is that we repair the road with what's called a revetment. And a revetment is basically, it's designed to have a low impact on the coastal system. So a revetment is basically a sloping pile of rocks that are designed by an engineer so that the rocks are stable. In other words, they're keyed and fitted. They're shaped in a way that they connect like a puzzle. And so that when waves wash onto the rocks, if it was just one rock, a wave could easily wash it and roll it away, a big wave. But because these rocks are all part of this puzzle, they're stable. And what that does is when the waves wash up, it gets absorbed into the gaps between the rocks. And that's important because when you have reflections, that's when you get beach erosion, because the reflections divert sand away from an area and reflect it down the coast. So another important consideration here with a rock revetment is that we can use a lot of the existing natural rocks in our structure. So this rocky coastline won't change in its character. It'll be designed as a structure with what's called a filter layer behind it. And the filter layer is what keeps the waves that wash in from taking that clay and that soil out back to the ocean. So the filter keeps the sands, the clays, the soils in place. The rocks are there to keep the filter from getting washed out. Does that make sense? So in addition to building this revetment structure, we also want to nourish the beach. We want to start bringing sand back on a periodic basis to account for any erosion that we see. We want to monitor this beach into the future and see how bad the natural erosion is. So we want to bring sand into the site and restore a public access, a public beach in that area. We're looking to improve water quality by stopping the loss of this soil, this clay, into the ocean. And we estimate this is going to cost about $2.2 million. And because we're so far along in this process already, we're really looking at getting started on construction as early as next year sometime. So we're looking at, if we get started, being about done with this project in 2 years from now. Now, the second option is to push the road inland. So this would basically require us abandoning the existing roadway and leaving this section to just erode into nature. And then we're going to go up. And if you are familiar, there's basically a little gully here in this section, a bunch of boulders in here. So we have to have a drainage culvert, and we then bring the road back down.
Excuse me, that is not nature. That belongs to Hawaiian Homes, and I understand you guys are requesting 1/30 of an acre to do that, if that was the option.
Absolutely, thank you for clarifying. Yes, this is entirely on Hawaiian Homelands property, and so this would require absolutely agreement from Hawaiian Homelands and working with the community. This is not something that the county can just say we need to do. This is something that the community would have to have consensus on. But, you know, looking at it from the environmental standpoint, we're going to avoid hardening or artificially armoring the shoreline. Now, if this shoreline continues to erode, it is going to, in a sense, armor itself. It already is exposing these boulders that are there. And then eventually it's going to end up being what's called a coastal bluff or a cliff. And that cliff is going to deflect waves as well. So it's going to be a hard, natural hard shoreline. You're not going to get a beach there ever again. And moving inland, basically rebuilding a road on that slope, we're now going to disturb the coastal environment. So there may be seabirds that are nesting up there. There may be ivy. There may be other cultural remains. You know, we're going to disturb probably some habitat. The cost, we're looking at about 3.3, maybe 3.8 million with that drainage culvert. So, so the cost is going to be more. The construction time, basically we're going to start this process all over again.
So does the county expect to compensate Hawaiian Homes if that is an option, or they just want Hawaiian Homes to give it to them?
No, they would definitely work with Hawaiian Homes on an agreement. You know, it's not like, you know, they're not just gonna expect. No.
Well, it's already sitting on Hawaiian Homes land since the road has been built.
That's a good point. So one thing I failed to mention, and thanks for reminding me, is that a portion of the existing road is already on Hawaiian Homelands. So we've already had meetings with Hawaiian Homes to discuss this issue. Basically what happened back in the past, they didn't have the same surveying techniques and GPS and accuracy that we have today, and they inadvertently put about 2,000 square feet of road on Hawaiian Homes property. So that's an issue going forward, because we need to work with Hawaiian Homes community and hopefully you know, we come to an agreement that helps us to minimize the impact and also provide benefit to Hawaiian Homes, and it's a win-win for everyone. So the third option, constructing a new bridge. So this is that stream which comes down. I think it's called Aliomanu Stream. But basically, it flows right to the ocean. There's a beach out there. This is the end of the two roads. So if you hike to the end of either road, either of the Aliomanu roads, you see this stream. There's you know, a nice grass area here, and a beach access that goes down to the little beach. But basically, if we're going to build a bridge, you know, I kind of just threw this together, but you know, this is what we're talking about. Building a road through here and a bridge. It's going to change the nature of this place completely. Plus, we're going to take two dead-end roads and make them a pass-through road.
But it was always a pass-through road.
Well,
It was always a pass-through road.
right, in the past, right? It was.
Doesn't matter, it's still a passable road.
One benefit to this option is this is already county land, this is already a right of way. So we don't need to go through.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention that the picture that you saw is only a conceptual, one of many options of how a bridge can be. This kind of should be what it would be with a box cover type bridge.
There's a one-lane bridge, one-lane road.
No.
issue that we would have to look at if this option is pursued, is to get more land to maintain the beach access. So it's not only the bridge, there's other issues involved with the bridge.
Why would it take you so she has to do something so she?
Because of the environmental permit. You know, why, good question, very good question. Why isn't the road fixed yet? Because of all these permit requirements. Can you imagine going for a bridge now? It's a lot more requirements to build a bridge. Even just to put it back.
Are you sure there was actually a bridge there in the past? I always thought it was dry land that sometimes passable. There's an actual bridge, I've never seen a bridge about this.
That might be the case. Does anybody remember the bridge?
There was a bridge. Tidal wave took it.
What kind of bridge?
59.
It's a wooden bridge.
Wooden bridge. So, from what I've heard, just around, is that it got destroyed in one of the hurricanes.
And so, you know, the fact that the bridge got wiped out, just makes it a little bit more complicated because, you know, we have to look at why the bridge got wiped out. And so when we put back the bridge, we've got to design so that it won't get wiped out like that. So it's definitely an involved process.
There's also, it floods very greatly down there, especially during like a 100-year flood. That bridge would be well underwater.
So that's a good point. So with designing a bridge, there's a lot that goes into it. You know, you have to do the hydrology, the hydraulics, you have to understand the 100-year flood, how big that flood is going to be, and design that bridge to pass that. So we could be looking at several years. First of all, it's going to be an expensive project. So we got to get the budget. We have to get a bridge in the budget. And then, you know, we have to do our engineering work, our studies. We have to start the environmental permitting process. And then we got to go through the designs, design the bridge, which is going to take some time. This is engineering, so you have to make sure it doesn't fall over in a hurricane or in a big flood. And then construct it. And bridge construction isn't easy. A lot of times you have to divert the stream. So this is going to be a lot longer project. We're not going to get this. I think this is a good estimate of how long we're looking before you have a bridge you can drive over.
This alternative also means that if they build a bridge, they would leave the road alone and just let it erode away, so Aliomanu still wouldn't be a through road.
Yes.
Right?
Correct. I mean, the best case scenario probably for this neighborhood is we do both. We build the bridge and we repair the road.
Yeah.
So that you have two ways of emergency evacuation.
But I doubt if they want that.
Yes.
I don't quite understand this. That reestablishes Aliomanu Road as a loop, meaning you're still going to have two access through Aliomanu. When you said the alternative would be construct a new bridge, I'm thinking that you would forego the road that is being eroded right now, but as I read that part that says reestablishes Aliomanu Road as a loop, what loop are you talking about?
Great, yes, thank you. I should clarify that statement. I'll make sure it's corrected. But yes, if we don't do anything and all we do is repair or rebuild the bridge, eventually it's not going to be a loop.
Yeah, for purposes of this study, if we select this option, yes, we are going to abandon the road. That's the whole purpose of this alternative analysis. It is to see what option has the least impact on the environment, you know, and the most practical, you know, considering everything else, cost, time.
So that's incorrect, reestablishes Aliomanu Road.
Well, yes, that's an option that in the future could be. Let's assume we fix the road now. This option is still there. If we could at some point still put back the bridge.
How does it affect beach access? There's a beach access there now.
Yeah, that was a question that was asked. that. And, you know, as part of the process, we go through the same process, and everybody said we wanted pedestrian access. So now we would have to secure more land and put that in the design of the bridge.
I think just to summarize, that's definitely a concern, and that would take some time to address, is how that access.
So, there is something in process right now to acquire that property where the beach access goes to the ocean. And it has to do with the county and open space. So I just want to leave that, you know, answer to the question that was just made.
Thank you for sharing.
So, if the bridge takes up the entire right-of-way, in other words, the right-of-way is only so wide, right? There's an existing right-of-way. If it takes up the entire right-of-way, then we'd have to look at how we would bring back that access through buying property, in other words. So that could add time and cost to this project.
I think she just mentioned that,
Yes.
some right away wasn't acceptable.
The easement is there, it exists. A portion of that belongs to the landowner. Right now, there's something in motion for Open Space Commission, which is a county commission, to purchase that property. So if you did the revetment and then you started getting your permits for the bridge going live, you know, then by that time, if you need another, you know, route to get out, that could be an option.
Okay.
Skip this one. Move on.
Do you have a question about the bridge?
Well, just a quick point about the bridge. I was in contact with one of the neighbors down there, and they were saying that there was an environmental assessment report done in regards to the bridge, and it seemed like it wasn't a feasible option because of, you know, increase in sea level and you know, wave reports
Thank you
and
for
stuff.
sharing. I mean, yeah, we probably would be back to the same thing, but
Yeah, I'm not aware.
Yeah, it's actually in the 2009 environmental assessment report. And
Yeah. Yes.
I'd like to suggest that I don't think you guys are going for this bridge thing, but if it were ever to happen, I think the current level of the bridge would be a lot higher, which would mean that you would have to build an approach to that to be higher. And so, you know, some of those houses on the end, you'd be up on the road looking down at their yard.
That's a very good point. The span of the bridge would be significant because we would need to elevate it so much. So yes, we would be going up and over and down. So it's not like we just go straight. Another question, please.
Not so much with that, but I'm really questioning your figures about cost and time duration here. I know that the state just got done building a real nice long bridge which needed to be elevated up there in the Arboretum. And that was at least 100 feet long, at least, you know, and could hold up to, I believe, you know, close to maybe 30 tons, you know, capacity-wise. And I know that it's nowhere near long the expand that you're going to have to do for Aliomanu. And it took them, I believe, what, maybe a year and a half to complete that project at a cost of only $2 million.
A year and a half from start to finish, in other words?
Yes, from start to finish. Yeah. Year and a half, $2.2 million.
I'd be interested in
All of it. I mean, they whopped it out. And it would be very similar to a bridge like this.
It was proposed in 2014. Construction.
So I'm not seeing the figures adding up with our county or where they're coming up with these $6.3 billion. Maybe what, 50, 70 feet tops, even if you had to have it elevated.
So there's different ways to do engineering estimates of cost that, you know, when you're this conceptual in any project. One way is to compare it to other similar projects that were done recently. That's where we came up with these figures. If you have a different, you know, recent project that you'd like us to look at, I'd be happy to look at it. So.
Look at the Arboretum. I mean, it'd be a great one to, as an example.
Thank you. That's unknown at this point. I mean,
I think it's an engineering thing, you should know that right now, and I think that's an engineering, you need 30 feet or something to construct it.
I'm actually not a bridge expert, so I wouldn't.
I'll try to address that question briefly. I think that it's physically possible you could build it on wall, any raised elevation on walls and not give me property permanently. It's possible. Might cost more. That may be one of the reasons why it's looking at $6 million. It's a challenging project no matter what. The right of way is relatively narrow there. Again, it's something that either by purchasing property or by building more expensive structures, it's an expensive effort essentially. And I don't. But it is feasible to do it within the right of way. There's a way to do it, but it just would potentially cost even more. But we're, again, this is a very preliminary estimate without any design at all. It's just a planning level estimate saying, in using the different methods for doing estimates, the very rough plan level type is what we've done here, what the consultant has done here, and that's what we have. That we think is good enough to compare to the other estimates, so we can say, okay, on an order of magnitude basis, what kind of cost are we talking about compared to the other alternatives for this resolving access for all the way.
No beach access, though. Can't you say there's no beach access at that point?
Again, this is something that if this project moves forward, we have to address the beach access, but it's not something that we intend to vet fully unless this is determined to be the alternative choice, which is not the case at this time. So,
Excuse me, I guess back to you, Mike.
Yeah. So if we can definitely discuss bridges after this, I would like to have that discussion. Let's move on. Okay, so this option, let me just go over this quick so that we've done our due diligence here. But extending HOKUALELE Road basically downhill. We'd have to go to the end of this road. There's a cul-de-sac. We need to go through the undeveloped properties along the ridge line and then drop down. This would be a major project involving a lot of grading and grubbing, a lot of clearing of the vegetation and earthwork to basically stabilize those slopes and cut into this hillside. And then, of course, we'd be changing the nature of this private agricultural community, making it a public thoroughfare. And there's also the potential for cultural sites, for environmental resources that we would be disturbing. And of course, this is entirely on the Department of Homeland's property, and they have already said they don't like this option. Kind of do they but we wanted to throw it out there and see if anybody wanted this road. Okay, moving on. Now, in case anybody else wants a road while we're at it, there's the potential that we could connect, basically going straight MAUKA right to the highway. And there's basically one large agricultural lot, and then there's another lot down here that we would need to basically go next to or go right through. This would involve eminent domain. It's involve the county purchasing the property, in other words, to build this road. And of course it would involve basically changing the character of the neighborhood. Again, we're going from a country neighborhood, and then we'd be building this thoroughfare. This is all Hawaiian homeland lots, and this is an agricultural lot, so we'd be changing the nature of this community. But we'd be avoiding the coastal armory. So there's kind of the same issues with this. Hawaiian Homelands has also said they don't like this option. It's just bringing, just changing their neighborhood too much. Yeah, question.
Real quick, on the inland route, on the extending the two roads, all of those wind up essentially at the same point on Aliomanu, right?
Yes, they do.
And as I drive past there every day, I look up and I'm looking up a major cliff.
Yes, that's right.
I'm seeing moving vans, concrete trucks, garbage trucks, everything else.
Correct. So to get it to the correct grade that you would want for a roadway, you're talking major earthwork and side slopes. So you're talking cutting giant side slopes into the land and a lot of earthwork. So it would change that cliff into a proper grade. It's totally technically feasible.
Yeah.
It's just, that's why it's expensive, and that's why it's going to take some time to get the permits and to go through the whole process. So this is a summary of all the options we've discussed. Basically, you know, this is where we're headed, but I think the bridge is kind of maybe the second best option, or maybe it's preferable. But I'd like to hear basically your comments and your questions now. Thank you.
Could we just have a preliminary show of hands on each of the 5 options?
We absolutely can. So how about we do that, and then we'll open it up to questions after, or do you have something you'd really like to? Okay, let's have a show of hands.
1 and 2.
Okay, let's have a show of hands first, but I would actually, it's a great suggestion. I would like to know what people think in this room. So maybe if you could all just close your eyes. Like we used to do in grade school.
We'll give you the count after the fact. So you have to tell your name.
But let's just go ahead. So repairing the road as it is today, like how many of you think that that's a good idea with the revetment as we've kind of okay. Realignment of Aliomanu Road. Basically pushing the road mountain inward.
Wait. Okay, can you ask someone one again? Just like take a picture of the hands. How many guys in favor of repairing the road as is?
This is that alternative on the screen now.
Does anybody like this alternative? Does anybody
Suggestion towards that alternative?
Yes, okay, thank you.
Could I do that?
Yes, please.
Okay. You're saying to going back to its existing or original structure of a 2-lane kind of a road for 28 residences down there. Something similar when you leave Honolulu going towards Waikoko, which is in the westerly direction on that island, okay, on our island.
Right.
You know, the state highway, mind you, 2-lane most of the time. And then all of a sudden you come to a couple of small narrowed areas with bridges or whatnot.
Great.
Why could that not be an alternative for only 28 residents? Because that's not major thoroughfare traffic there.
So that's an excellent.
Keeping it single.
That's a great suggestion, and thank you for bringing it up. Can we table that real quick, just so, I want to get through these options, because I don't want to lose the momentum here, but who likes the bridge option? Okay, let's table that real quick too. And let's discuss it. I mean, this isn't nothing official.
Clarification, option 1, right? We're voting on option 1.
You can vote twice.
Number 1 up here. I mean, the first alternative.
Yes, the first alternative.
That's what
you're saying.
Vote on that already.
Okay, and I think everyone, it's safe to say, unless you want to get...
5.
Okay. Thank you. a good point. And, I think we'll expand on that a little more in our
Let Mike answer Tim's question earlier.
I do want to get back to your questions, please. I think you have good points, and I really think that's important for the discussion. So can we please get back to, I think you're discussing making it single lane, which is not only on Kauai, but also like at East Maui, they have single lane bridges and single lane roads in critical areas. Right. So that is an option. I mean, that is potentially one way we can go. The benefit to that is we can minimize the impact on the environment, basically, right? So that's the plus. One potential way to minimize the impact is by pushing the road more MAUKA than more MAUKA. So if we still want 2 lanes, we can cut slightly into the slope, or we can basically do a single lane, but then the drawbacks to that is basically this issue of if we need 2 lanes out or 2 lanes in or wider vehicles, basically we're limiting ourselves in terms of our utility.
I think that option, the bridge supposed to be together.
Right. Well, we did actually do an analysis on a single lane versus 2 lanes. And the cost is very similar. I think it was like 2.1 versus 2.3. And the reason why the cost is so close is because a lot of the cost is towards the protection of the road, the revetment. The actual width in the pavement of the road is not that much. It's really the work involved in protecting the road, which is the revetment work. It is the bulk of the cost.
So it's totally feasible to bring back 2 lanes and to do it for about the same price. But if the community would rather it be a 1-lane road, then that's important feedback as well. So do you guys want to vote on that, or do you want to answer questions?
I'd like to add one more thing to that option. What if they made it a single lane road with a walkway for pedestrian, like a pedestrian walkway?
Oh, yeah.
So the people can still walk, Everybody walks their dogs, everybody exercises on that road. I see people every morning. So
that's feasible as well.
I just like to comment on the fact that even though 2 lanes would be not that much more expensive, the other downside of having a 2-lane bridge or 2 lanes available is because I live on Anahola Road, which used to be a dead end. And now we get so much traffic, and the wider the road is, the faster people will drive. So I think having a 1-lane bridge is the better alternative, because then people you're going to have to slow down. And we talk about only 28 residents now. I go up to Lohena once a week. They have a bridge, and now Lohena, that road has more than 28 residents, but they have a bridge that you have to wait and let the other cars pass. They might have 2 of those up there. So I think going smaller, even though the cost would be better if you did a 2-lane bridge, I think for the purpose of Aliomanu residents, you would want people to slow down.
Well, I happen to live right there and directly impacted. So I don't really see the benefit. If the cost is the same, I don't see the benefit of not putting in 2 roads. Okay?
That's because you don't live where you have to contend.
I live there.
People, no. But they're not speeding right now because there's no 2 lanes. I'm saying if you do a 2-lane, you'll have people speeding. I live where there's people speeding on my road.
How would you determine there are people speeding there?
Because I'm not talking about, I'm saying the synopsis is that if you do this, you will have people speeding.
We're not talking about, the problem that we're talking about is erosion. The bridge just happens to be, the road just happens to be there. That should be,
I'm going to interrupt you guys.
How long have you lived there?
Let's stop. Okay. We understand you prefer single lane, you prefer 2-lane. We understand that.
Yes, but I'm saying that he's not following the meeting procedure. He's attacking me.
That's what I'm trying to get at right now.
Right.
We need need to have the comments and questions directed at the front. So I just wanted to bring that up. Comments and questions to us. We got, if you want to add to your point,
These 28 residents that we are being referred to.
Talk to us. Talk to us.
Okay.
All right.
We have to have a say in it, and if the county decides that, yeah, there is a difference between putting in a two-lane road or a single-lane road. I mean, we're not talking about, the problem is not about speed. If we really analyze the core of this problem, it's erosion. Okay? When we leave here, we have to make sure that we are satisfied with the solution to the erosion problem. The road just happens to be there.
Thank you.
That should be our common concern.
We're losing people. Before we lose any more, I think we should do a straw vote. And again, this is a straw vote or straw poll. This is not binding in any way. And we want to hear, though, we definitely want to get a sense of at least what's in this room, whether people prefer the single-lane option for the repair at the existing location, or a two-lane option for the repair at the existing location. So,
why don't you ask that of the people who want the bridge, and no one else should have to respond to that question if they don't even want a bridge.
sorry, this is not for the bridge. This is for not for the bridge. This is for the repairing the road at its existing location as two-lane or single-lane. That's what we're talking about. Okay. Yeah. So yes, and we would ensure that there's enough room that pedestrians can get by while cars are also going by. We can do that, not a problem. So, two options. First option is effectively putting the road back at its existing width, which varies between 16 and 18 and a half to 19 feet. Okay? Which would be two lanes. Okay, votes for that, the two-lane option. Okay? And the option of a single-lane bridge with enough room for pedestrians to get by while a car also passes. So similar numbers, but I think a little more for the single lane. Again, this isn't a binding vote. There's a lot of people beyond those who are here that would need to weigh in on this at the county. But it's very good for us to know that there's support for both in this case, and a little bit more for single lane.
And if you have specific concerns or comments or anything that you want to make official, of course, when we publish this EA, please put that in writing. Send that in, and we can have that as part of the document. So your voice is in there, official.
Okay.
The gentleman.
Go ahead first.
So, would you be going into Hawaiian lands, the land?
So the question is, would we be going into Hawaiian homelands? For the two-lane option, we would have to go into Hawaiian homelands property and get the proper.
One lane, you don't have to do it?
For the one lane, there's
One lane.
options both ways, honestly.
Okay.
I'm not going to say one way or the other, but for the single lane, it would be possible to build it without encroaching on Hawaiian homes land, which again, the road is already on Hawaiian homes. If we did a single lane and the road was not going on Hawaiian homes, there would still be 5 or 6 feet of extra space that's flat. That's on Hawaiian homes off the road, if that makes sense. Okay? That would be possible to do that. Right?
Yeah, it is. So if we do a single lane, the issue there is that corner, we get really close to Hawaiian lands and to the ocean. So we're gonna need to go into the ocean. If we need to avoid Hawaiian lands, we need to go more MAUKA. We need to.
Yeah, just move the redevelopment further out into the ocean, where the road was originally.
The road was never there, actually. The railroad used to be.
So you show the erosion since the 1920s. It used to be further out there. Plus, there's state land out there.
Yeah, but the road was built in the 1940s. It was built roughly where it is now.
Between the county land and the ocean, there's a strip of state land, right?
State land is everything on fire and how we run over here. So,
other questions? I'm sorry for the rain. We can't do that well, but go ahead.
Just want to make sure we're not losing sight of the reason for the safety issue. So if you have to evacuate out of there for a tsunami or a hurricane, or if you have an environmental
fire trucks or ambulances in to those other businesses that are down there or the end. So I think this is cognizant of the safety features of that as opposed to a one-lane, two-lane road.
Yeah,
That access down there.
Thank you.
I just was curious, could you tell us what the timeline moving forward is, like for decisions being made, and what are you guys, what's like the next course of events for you guys moving forward based on this?
Very good question. So I am very happy to see so much support for the project, for repairing the road. With that said, we're going to move forward. We're going to publish the supplemental EA. We're going to start dialogue with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to get the permits going. So we're hoping that by the same time next year, we should have most of the permits in place and hopefully be able to go out to bid probably by ending of next year.
But when is the final decision going to be made on what is going to happen?
Right now, the decision has been made. You know, as I mentioned, our purpose is to do this repair. I mean, we're ready to go forward. We just needed to do the due diligence, which is to get feedback on the alternative analysis, which we got.
So we'll go back, we have to publish the EA, right? So, and the EA, just so you know, the EA is going to include all the alternatives. We're not going to take them out. The EA needs to include all the alternatives. That doesn't mean we haven't heard you tonight. We're just not changing that aspect. And we probably won't make a final decision on what we're doing until the EA is published and we receive, and the comment period is ended. When the EA is published and the comment period is ended, assuming the responses we get are similar to what we heard tonight, chances are we're moving forward with, I mean, I can't see any course of action, if that's the case with comments, that we would move forward with anything besides repairing the road where it is today. I think the one choice we would then have to make is it 2 lane or 1 lane? And I won't try to speculate on what we choose on that now, because there's other people within the county that would be involved with that discussion. And of course, we would wait for the EA comments to come in. So that, I would say, EA published, what do you think? Publishing? By?
Should be a few weeks.
Okay, so by sometime in May, which means comment periods are about a month?
Comment periods about a month, so it'll come out on the environmental notice.
So by the end of June, we ought to have a decision as to what we're moving forward with, as far as where the location is, and hopefully at that same time, roughly a decision on 1 lane versus 2 lane. To answer the question. And then Tim, and then in the back.
Go ahead. Secondary of having access, enough access for tsunami, how big of a part does that play? And is that going to linger to come back in, or is that being addressed, or that will be pushed aside?
The access for tsunami
for the access, just like, is there a federal mandate, or is there something that is pushing, are we under that, access, availability for tsunami? And if we don't address it now, does that mean it has to come back to be addressed? If it's just a single lane and there's no other access going to the highway?
Yeah, that's one part of the calculus on the single lane versus 2 lane will be, what is the volume there? How does that flow interact? There's no doubt that this is a lower volume road than at least half a dozen other places on the island that have single lane bridges or constraints. But because it's a tsunami evacuation area, that might be something we have to put into that calculus, which is again one of the reasons why I can't state tonight what we're going to do. We need to evaluate the traffic volumes, the emergency evacuation issues, and all those things before we decide on 1 versus 2. Tim, and then here.
So once again, Mike, to either one of the mics here, this evening, in particular, since you're putting this on as the consultant, with the alternatives, I know that Uncle Sal made a presentation about if we had a single road, just coming around as that, and possibly then, the addition of a bridge. Now we know that this is a historic ancient trail that has then been paved, and it's an ancient one. So there too, could we not then have the bridge that used to be there be placed back as part of the historical element to that road? It doesn't have to be a major one built, so if it ever got washed out again or something, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg, and therefore you'll have both options, with the also maybe helping with the tsunami evacuation principle as well too. It just makes sense that that would be inclusive as an alternative possibly. I'm just sitting here looking at this, you know, and we use them, we've seen it, and it's a possibility of that happening, I believe. Once again, you boys may have an answer for me. Go ahead.
Sorry, I think that as part of the current project that will be constructed within the next couple of years, we won't be building the bridge if we move forward with the repair as it is. We can look at the possibility of adding a bridge in the future. That would have to go through the typical processes for ranking those amongst other projects in the county and funding, going to county council for funding. This project, getting the funding for repair as located is anticipated in the time that we're ready to build it, right? But adding more to it, like another bridge, not so much. We have to go back to the coffers. I did. Even a simple bridge, millions of dollars, right? You go to White and Pedridge only. What was go back? Okay, next question here.
The phrase that you used, something about the amount of traffic. I'm curious, out of those 28 homes, how many are actual residents?
How many what are?
Actual residents that live on the
I don't know that information at this time. But the way we solve something like that is we can take traffic counts. We have traffic count machines we can deploy at a moment's notice. So we can easily get counts to see just how much traffic there is, which is what we would do as part of the decision to go to one lane versus two.
That's not the same as 28 homes. There's vacation rentals. Are they?
I don't know the answer to that question. The planning department has information on official vacation rentals, but we haven't been saying information.
People drive down there. Well, in answer to Leah's question, there are a considerable amount of vacation rental tourists that speed down Aliomanu Road and interrupt the lifestyle that's down there. So it's not just going to be 28 residents. It's going to be all their double vacation rentals.
Understood.
Can you put in, when you resurface the road, can you put in bumps to call
I'll answer that question. We have a program for installing speed humps on roads that are not included. There's a process for that. It's outlined in the county ordinance, and that would have to be followed to get speed humps on the road. The process starts with the community. The community wants that. The signatures and all of that. We won't do it as part of this project without that process going through. So if that's something somebody wants to know about that, we can provide the information on the ordinance and that procedure. Again, we can provide that information if that's something you'd like or somebody would like to see to get the signatures necessary for that to take place. There are limitations on the types of roads that can be put on. I don't know if Aliomanu is in that category or not.
The bridge, and you do a temporary slip bridge. So this is the case, you have to get out. You can run, or have your bicycle, or something.
It's going to be a traffic control plan. So we're going to have to do some of the most, disturbing traffic work at night. Minimize. We have to close some of the roads. road at certain times, but for the most part, most of the work is going to be ocean side. So we might have temporary steel plates. Thank you. Yeah, just for the residents.
Are there any other questions?
I see the start of construction is, several years down the line.
What are we looking at?
A year and a half? If everything goes according to plan, we're looking at about a year and a half.
Well, obviously nothing has gone for you. This thing has been going on for more than 15 years.
Yeah.
So my concern is that in the meantime, there are many temporary work patches. The road is still eroding.
Right.
Okay? That should be a primary, #1 concern of this community. That place is eroding.
Well, we're doing it. In fact, as I mentioned, we just had another emergency procurement, so to speak. We're putting in 11 more sandbags.
Yeah, but they get destroyed.
The new sandbags are not getting destroyed. They're staying in place.
What's that?
The bags are...
The sandbags we've placed in the last year or two have not been destroyed.
Yeah, the new ones.
We only placed a few before. We're placing a lot more this time, so it will be a larger area that's
So
protected.
you're saying is these new bags will prevent the erosion?
No, what I'm saying is that as the road needs repair, we will repair it.
And the new bags will slow down the erosion dramatically from what we've seen over the past year. This last winter we saw large erosion. Slowing that down.
I mean, I've seen this road reduced the way it is. I live there. I drive that road with Lily walks there every day. Okay? So that's what I'm saying, that people that live there are impacted by this work.
Right. So there's
my concern is that this long period before we actually get started, this road is continually eroding and you're continually cutting into the hillside.
No, we're not. We're stabilizing the banks by putting these sandbags.
Yeah, at the same time, the hillside is getting weak.
Right, and I hear you. I hear your frustration. All I can say is we're moving forward. We're trying to get this done as quickly as we can now. I mean, with the support that we have tonight, I'm really hoping that we can start as early as next year.
It helps. It helps to have community support.
Large waves come and take out the rest of the road. I mean, when you do a repair
slows down the waves.
We would probably have to do it.
I want to clarify, you said that there are 28 residents in Aliomanu Road?
There's 28 homes roughly speaking, houses.
Okay, so you're counting the homes that are from Kuaehu Highway to where the road is eroded?
No, after.
Only from where the bridge is washed out.
Past where the road is washed out.
From where the bridge washed out?
From where the road is partially washed away to the end of the road is approximately 28 houses, homes, built.
After the erosion?
Yes, after the erosion.
Yes.
It's just so excellent, isn't it?
We didn't walk up to each one to see how many units there are in each building. That's
Because right now the entire discussion is regarding road repair. That's really what the major point is.
Yes.
But yes, what is to be more concerned is the erosion because of the environmental impact it has, the ocean and the people that use that place. And over the years, I have seen, what you call temporary work. And they're work. They might be there for a few months.
Well, that's the nature.
The fact that I see a long-term long time before the project actually starts should be a concern to all of us because that area there keeps eroding.
So let me try to address that one more time. So we placed 4 sandbags about a year and a half in one spot. Those sandbags are doing a good job of holding that one spot. Let me finish. we're about to place 11 more sandbags to cover the larger areas
If
that
you
are
ask anybody here if it's a good job, I don't think they'll say it's a good job.
Yes, they are. Temporary job. I don't think they are.
The four that are working, perhaps we should have installed more a year and a half ago for a longer area, but we're doing that now, okay? And the ones that are there lasted a year and a half until now already without much erosion where those are located. The erosion that's occurring now is away from that. We're putting those sandbags in here, one moment, putting those sandbags in here, and we anticipate that will protect the larger area that's being eroded more significantly now for the year and a half to 2 years that it'll take to get this project underway.
Okay, for the people that live here, our main concern is not about the bags. It's not about how long this bag is going to last. Our main concern is to prevent this erosion. It's not about the bags.
But the bags that are there now, the bags that were placed a year and a half ago are protecting that spot. We're about to put bags on the rest of the park.
I just drove there to here.
I'm not talking about adjacent to the bags, I'm talking behind the bags themselves. It's protected fairly well. Adjacent to the bag, it's not.
Vegetation falling into the ocean.
Yes, because it's away from where the sandbags are placed. That's
I think what he's driving at, I think he's basically saying the quicker you can get to fixing this road, the better will it be.
We're trying.
And what is the quickest way you can do it?
You need to be very careful what you're asking for, because if we do a good enough repair, temporary repair, you're not going to get your permanent repair. That's what happens. That's why we're in this position. The temporary repair was done. It worked better than people thought, and that's why they said there's no problem here.
No, I'm not talking about temporary repair. I'm talking about repairing it now.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do that.
We're doing it as fast as we possibly can, given the permitting process.
So it would be helpful for me moving forward, because you have good points. If you could put those in writing in response to the EA, just put your points in writing. I think that would help.
Yeah.
You know, that you're concerned about the erosion, you don't want to just see
you need it done as soon as possible. I hear that. And we're trying to.
If you could put, your concern in writing, that would really be helpful for the whole process.
How come it takes so long to get a permit? Like, can't we just go to the governor and say?
Because this is the new law. This is the way it is. Nobody can do anything without having all of these done. And government has to do more, because we're the government. We cannot break the law. We got to follow the law.
They have to get permits, and they have to get reviewed by government agencies. And so they take their time to review these things, and then if they need anything else. It's a process. It is. It's the environmental process, which was kind of started in the 70s.
Because the wall down, 50 yards down around the bend. I mean, two properties, empty, and these are all of them. Half the property is gone. So that wall, where did you go?
We're trying to avoid those
That should be done right. I hope you guys learned something from that wall.
When you don't have access at all.
I don't know if that was completely
No, that was just.
It depends on how you define emergency. So we're doing the temporary bag as an emergency. That's effectively what it is. The one we're putting in within the next 4 months. It's effectively the emergency repair. Until we can put this permanent repair.
Like Fuji Beach, similar.
And we're going to keep addressing it. So, you talk about the dike with the leaking holes. We're going to keep plugging those holes until we get the permanent repair of the dike. And that's what we're doing on this shoreline.
Well, I think you guys have done a great job. Thank you. Yeah. You're also doing your job.
Thank you. And thanks for coming, and thanks for your attention. If anyone wants a business card so you can contact me with any further questions, concerns, or just to talk story, if you see something that needs addressed, please